think back in '68, my friend Amrit Desai, he started Kripalu yoga around the world. He was a friend. I went with him to see his guru when he spoke for the first time in 12 years. And we were buddies. In his class, he would have, I had a place around the corner called Center House. We were just friends, and he was a yogi. In his classes, we'd have all these people. I went once because I've always been shy, believe it or not. And the beginning exercise would be to hold your hands apart. And you'd feel all this presence. They call it prana in India. And if you just do this right now, anytime during the day or night, you'll feel like a ball of presence. You do it 10 minutes, 90 seconds, 3 years, whatever. It never goes away. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Just like learning arithmetic. The basics. For spirituality, you see without seeing. You hear without hearing. It's always here. You read the writings of the mystics, and there is a way of escape from it all. But you'll never escape. You'll be like my friend Chief Crazy Horse, who I felt just before we began. And whenever I feel his presence, I bow inside and greet him as Holy Father. He was a great medicine man. Had his horse shot out from under him 8 times, was never hurt. So he had big medicine. And in other words, quite spiritual. George Washington believed in divine providence. I have a little book of his sayings, 200-year-old little tiny book, things that he said in the 1770s or starting in 1753. And just a very profoundly powerful human being to have achieved what he did. And whenever he had battles, and there'd be musket rounds going off around him, many times there were fragments of the shells in his clothing, on his armature, his horse, but he was never killed. And he believed in divine providence, which is good will out, that which God is, which is divine providence, which is something good. When I say Holy Father to Crazy Horse, it's this presence and this hearing without hearing. It's always there for all of us in the world who are spiritual. Like my friend Elegy, that's her music, E-L-E-G-I-E, Elegy, and she's a great doctor and my mentor. And you're near Elegy and you feel just a peace, a very gentle peace. And yet she's a genius, profoundly powerful work in her field. Greg's here, a master martial artist, and he's so quiet you'll never know it, never know it. Many of us are quite spiritual. I myself, having identified with the absolute sense of divine providence that all this must end. In other words, that good will out. There'll be a good outcome for all spiritual people in the world at this time. Couldn't guarantee it before now. Not that there is a now, because as soon as you feel this pranic ball, it's like a little sun. It's wonderful. And then your other senses, you deepen them a little bit. I've never had to practice these things. It's always been there. I didn't know what it was until one day with my buddy John, when I realized what it was. I had a concept for what I felt always. And all of us who identify with this know there is a God. And we wondered and wondered and wondered why the rest of this has to be, and it's all in perception. Elegy's music just lifts you beyond all the travail where you're completely broken apart by life, and yet spiritually you lift right out of it, and all is well. My teacher, Susan George's Secret Garden, where she has all the hummingbirds out back and everything's flowering, and she did it all on her own, and she had to give up her koi fish when she moved in a different home, but she found a wonderful home for each one of them over a period of time, and you know, we all move with the rhythm of the earth. There's a great enlightened Zen master, the famous quote that they asked him what he does, you know, but he's enlightened, but he's the great master, and someone asked him what he does, and he says, I chop wood and I carry water. In other words, he does his daily routine, whatever it might be. Greg is the general manager of Powerhouse Gym in Redwood City, and it's got the award for the best powerhouse gym of hundreds in the world. And that's because he, unflinching 24 hours a day, does the right thing. He'll never not do the right thing. And he's brilliant in so many fields. We simply take a little time, we'll feel this profound change in our atmosphere. We have to do something in a daily way. Our habits must change. They don't own you, you don't owe them, but you have to have a great vision to step beyond it all. Have a great vision, step beyond it all. When Crazy Horse's people were being slaughtered, he knew there was nothing else to do. He had to fight. He simply sat down quietly as the great medicine man he was, and said to the other chiefs that to do a great thing, you must have a great vision, like an eagle, moving off deep into the blue light. In other words, there are no details. You do what must be, like Greg does, like Susan George does, and my mentor, Elegie, E-L-E-G-I-E. I love her music, it's very profound. And you'll see little shooting stars when you watch it. And for someone who's never on any of his devices or anything ever, it's fun to have something to do. So life doesn't have to be a drudgery, but you must know you're different than everyone else in the world, and you're not in the world. You transcend the physical sense, oh, I'm not my body. When you do this, you feel this, and it will fill your room. I've been in places like the Dalai Lama's private temple in Dharamsala many, many years ago with my buddy John, and I can't tell you the presence is 6 hours or like a split second. That happens to me every day of my life, to be honest with you. I'm a spiritual person, and I demand that we all become spiritual personages. It's really quite simple. If you know everything out there is a facade, it's a construct, a fabrication. You can see God through nature, but that breaks up your senses like fractals, you know, like in math. It's like the things that are open, like the designs on people's clothing, and everything today are like flower-like, and that breaks up the energy. There's nothing static, nothing hard and fast about perception. I've developed many different methods of teaching people to drop their senses, and I originally did it for combat veterans with my buddy Peter and his wife Rosamond, who studied these things and brought it along, and she knew some great psychiatrists, and we put together an organization, and just we'd listen to people who were combat veterans, because Dr. Gabodi said they had the VA hospitals had failed because there was no blame here. It was like, he called it failed help syndrome. They didn't have the tools to help, so they either blamed the veterans or put them on drugs. And so we all got together, and Sarge, the great genius, he had degrees in Stanford, he got his degree in psychiatry, and then Cambridge, and then Harvard, he had a degree. Just a real genius. And And I just walked into circumstances like this all of my life, like my buddy Amrit. To always see that, because I don't like it here. Didn't want to see my mom suffer. So when she was dying and had Alzheimer and she was out of it, and I went to Philadelphia and sat in Marlena's, my sister's home, and sat by the bedside one morning, and I couldn't take it. And then all of a sudden I realized I sit and counsel people just by being quiet and listen, be there and not react, and if anything comes up, you can deal with it. There are different ways to communicate. You always acknowledge any communication. If you do this with people, I did habitually from the child, someone says something, you truly listen and say, I got it, or you nod your head, or if it's something really powerful, like if Greg's teaching a class, yes sir. Then the mind turns off, which is the whole idea of martial arts training. You transcend yourself. And you never become perfect, you just become a little better every time. My buddy Pedro Mink back here, he's the national champion of Brazilian martial arts, and he's the, boy, I haven't met anything like him. He's an illumined being, and all he does is fight all day, teach fighting, and he can have piles of 6 or 8 little 2 to 5, 6-year-old children running around him and all, and he can discipline people like Greg can from many years of martial arts. They bring the parents to come here the second night, and there's tears rolling down their eyes because they got the kid to conform to reality. Not that you should stifle any child, because their sensory equipment works. They're learning this for 2 years, that, from 2 to 3 they're hitting each other, just want to find out what that means. But transcendent of that, if your heart is big enough, like Pedro Mink's heart is, then they go right back to this stage without having to sit the pranic energy to lower their concentration. He just does it because he demands it. Because he's a good kid, must have gone through an enormous lot growing up in Brazil, and he became the toughest kid in the world and sweetest man that I ever met, and can do anything all the time in the outward world, which I can't. I've been too much of a monk all my life. So now I'm learning from him to step out of my shell and begin my destiny, which is your destiny. Because he's our God, our Holy Father God. And he's God because it was before all this is, before churches saw light, before names were named, before anything was. God is. It's a tremendous awakening to have, to know you don't have to live in pain or drudgery, and you can heal your mom. Your dog doesn't have to die. You understand what I'm saying? He's so wonderful. He's such a nice person. But nice in the sense of infinitude. We love our animals, our friends when they pass. We know there's something beyond. I'm going to make an example which it works. You know, you have an infant, like my buddy brought his little tiny baby the other day with his wife, and it's something so wonderful and quieting. But when you step out of the sphere of being a mortal, relating to your body, like I say, you can step through it through feng shui, you open up the space and things are not enclosed, you feel freer. That's the same as nature. Everything's lighter and more clear, and you don't have idiots around you and where you have to relate to that are in their thinking mind. And so you have the child, that quiet it brings about, and that awe where you can just hold a child all day. No one knows more about it than Susan George, who mentors and advocates for orphans all the time. And her kitties, you can throw them up in the air and they'll just fall down on you like a pancake. I swear to God, 3 at a time, because any animal around her is just know they're safe. It's that mother bear thing. It's stronger than any tough guy, respectfully. moving back to this thought that that presence you feel with an infant, with a child. And all of us have had these experiences. The baddest person in the world, the eeriest, craziest person, because I'm a shrink and I on my own, not with the crazy people in the university farms, but because God gave it to me. So when you step in your spiritual atmosphere, and you'll see something more transcendent than that, not different than in tone, but when you see God, it won't affect you like, oh, it's so pure that it's, and this word for me, and I'll explain it, is infinite purity. More than infinite purity. Do you understand? So when we say in the beginning that the world is a construct, it's because it never was. When you have, I'll move right into, say, the Dalai Lama's temple, or hearing elegies of music, it's something's amiss in the world. But when true art hits your eyes, and your ears, your soul, you're transcendent. When you experience God, when you have what's called nirvana, samadhi in India, the expressions that St. Francis had about it was just so much, the world doesn't exist. It's so beautiful, so wonderful. And when you're in that, I'll say my own experience one time took 5 months. I'd had it with the world, and I remember walking up down the streets in Philadelphia. I had one of those, beyond the near-death experience, it was physical and all that, but it was, so I woke up in the hospital and I was, all was well. It was interesting. I'm not going to go into it. And at that time, I had it with the whole world. Like, why the fuzz am I here, God? Because I know that this is a joke, a bad, bad joke. So for the next 5 months, even though I was already illumined, I had this one moment to the next, a deeper, deeper place, and I'd walk up and down the streets of South Philly or City Hall, you know, or Rocky in the movie. I'd go through there, take a little run sometimes, out the Parkway, from City Hall where my dad worked. I'd run from South Philly, and I'd go up there and up on the right hand, on the top of the beautiful art museum there was a statuary it was from Rodin. It was called Social Consciousness, 4 figures. It was all wretched of the earth and someone holy, and it was just, and I just look at it for half an hour with an absolute awe. It captured my sense of compassion for the whole world, and it was like looking at it from God's eye, as I'm doing now, as all good people, as every great artist has, as every mother that ever lived understands. It's Crazy Horse's vision. And I'm asking you to have Crazy Horse's vision. So when you step out into this thing, don't come back. Don't let them bring you back. It is a construct. So the experience after 5 months, it became infinite. This world, it's always me, if I blink my eyes, it doesn't exist. All spiritual people have that. I'm trying to articulate it for all of us. There are hundreds of millions of spiritual people in the world. When you have that vision, don't come back. Don't let them pull you back down. Or do what Professor Mink does back here. He just won't let you let down. He won't let you. So he makes fun out of spirituality for me, so I can ground myself and do what I have to do. what we must do. It can't go on. It doesn't have to. You're reading the Apocalypse, is that the end of the Bible? The last books of the end of days and so forth. That's happening. All of us who are spiritual know this, feel it, and we're still hit with the clutter factor of the dark side. And because I understand it so well and so completely, it doesn't exist for me, but my heart aches 25 hours a day, every moment, for everyone else, because I won't have it anymore. There is a God, and when you feel this, which is the whole point, we're going to endless dimension, and there's heaven. It's oceans and oceans of presence. It's not just an out-of-body experience. This world doesn't exist. That's the whole idea of religion. At the end, oh, we'll live a good life and then we'll go to heaven. No, that's a bad mistaken perception. That's an insult to that which really shouldn't be named. Because he's holy. Because you are holy. Holy is a natural condition. It won't change you. Professor Mink can be that way in the midst of horrible circumstances, so I'm learning to get back into my body somewhat so I can fulfill my mission, because I can't feel myself literally, see myself in a mirror or anything. And I'm getting my last tweak in my spirituality from Mr. Mink to ground what I have to do and present it. In other words, we're all artists of the stuff of our own heart and soul. My buddy Tim does it with, well, he's a sheriff for many years, every kind of law enforcement, and developed the gang intelligence unit. He's the most Christian person I've ever met. He's so good at scary. At the same time, he's, you don't want to be a bully on the streets, because you won't be after you meet him. But all he is heart and love, and he runs with his buddy Chuck, or helps it in every way. The Jericho program, where they get prisoners who are good people underneath, and they redevelop them on the floor there, just like Professor Mink does. He makes gold out of lead, like the old alchemists were wont to say. And that always meant in a spiritual sense, in a mystical sense, but they couldn't say it then because the Catholic Church would kill them if they said they had their own religion. So have a great vision. Speak to my Holy Father, Crazy Horse. He'll be here. All these people, I mentioned my friend Kobo Hito, who's a world champion wrestler and sushi chef and other things. And you'll never see this of him. He'll never give it up, ever. I know I'm the only person who ever had it. You can't explain when you have things like that happen. The clarity of it, the simplicity and the humanness of it. There is a God, and God is transcendent of everything. So we have to toughen up. It's our own neighborhood that we're protecting, meaning your mom and mine, meaning Susan's soul and mine. We're good people. It's a bad world. It doesn't truly exist. So if you comprehend that, all the little temptations that hit you, that a great artist like Elegy knows, it's just, you don't have to take it. You keep responding to it by becoming that eagle, moving more deeply into the deep blue sky. You'll never touch down again when you see him, the only God. You're the eagle, the sky, and the midnight blue. Accept no false gods. In perception, you quiet yourself, work on whatever exercises to get there you want to do. There are thousands of self-enhancement techniques, and most of them are very boring, but they all work if taken to fruition, like any basic exercise. They all work. And so they'll just open up the senses to show you, oh, it's not really here. It's just, it blows up like air. My buddy Rob here, who owns this gym, he'll like to do exercises where I'll touch that wall. I'll say, walk over and touch the wall, and it's all in a quiet state, and my concentration has to be completely pure. And I'll say, touch that wall. And when he does, I'll say, thank you. Touch the chair. So walk over to the chair. I have no thought except to wait. There is no thought until and then he touches the chair, and I go, oh, thank you. Touch that painting. Thank you. And in other words, there's nothing else going on. It's just a clear communication. If you make yourself quiet, you can listen to people for hours. I've done it. And people will feel free. That's the whole idea of going to a guru. They're transcendent beings, and you sit in their presence, and they call it darshan or something in India. We did sit with the teacher, and you just simply feel God. It's so simple. And any temptation about it, I'm not good enough for this or that, that's the devil. The devil is anything solid. Any piercing voice or sound. Anything you learned in school. Where you had to wait to raise your hand to ask a question. You're a little child. Professor Mink here, he feels what it is before they do, and he's got them doing, the question is answered before they can think, and so they learn to not think and just have fun like little boys and girls. And then that goes up to all the great champions that train with him every day. It's just a happy place, which was the whole idea of martial arts originally from. It's around the world, the history of it, but with Bodhidharma, who I consider Mr. Mink to be, it was a monk who sat and looked at a wall for 8 years because he was already illumined and wondering why the world still exists. So he looked at the wall for 8 years, like this, watching your breathing, whatever you want to do. He was already out of his head in the sense of Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, which he started. That's what this is about. You get out of your head and you just feel your lower abdomen expanding and releasing with inhalation and exhalation. I'm not doing it now, I'm saying how to do it. And you'll get your mind out of here, the prefrontal cortex, and it's a very happy place. And then whatever residual thought is left, that the world still exists, you put that 18 inches in front of you as a Buddhist monk or a martial artist. Pedro doesn't do this because he just does it naturally, which is what should be, which is what we're talking about today. Just do this. Be spiritual. Transcend it all. When I say transcend, when you'll have these enormous spiritual experiences, and I humbly, like representing 600 million people, I'm representing God, will be with you. It's so simple. The world really is a very stupid mistake. And it doesn't exist as soon as you feel what Rodin was feeling when he produced that great work of art, social consciousness, that I would go up and witness to, and I couldn't move. I'd see it half an hour and then I'd run back. And then when I got a little older, I'd run back to the local joints downtown, or see my buddy Tony at Magdalena Meats or whatever, and start Center House, help the teachers that taught the Parkway program for gifted kids, etc., etc. There is a God. You are God's offspring. You arrived here out of infinite compassion. You're an infinite presence. And like I say, it's so transcendent, you can't breathe, you can't think, you can't feel. Everything disappears when you see Him, the only God. You'll know what to do, what to think, what to say, what method of healing. People come see me all my life. I've never hung a shingle or something, just wind up doing it or walking in the circumstance. And you'll always know how to talk to, you see Elegy, or Elodie's her real name, and Elegie is the music, I love it. And, or Susan George, she's just a stunner, but like a city manager, ran a fire department for a couple of years, believe it or not. And grew up, her dad ran the Rod and Gun Club at Fort Ord, and took her to the fights on every Wednesdays. So I'm going to take her to see Greg's son, the world championship of amateurs here in the city in a couple of weeks. And I was shocked when I mentioned that she really wanted to go, and then she explained all these other things. So you never know who or what everyone's background is. But if you're spiritual, you'll know the heart and the soul. Some of them are against us, and it doesn't matter. They're all against us, and it doesn't matter. There never was a time or a place or a thought profound enough to gain the attention of Father God. Let all this go. We'll walk with you through the end time, to the timeless place, the true church, the church of one God and one Father of all. And like Aristotle said, all good men are fighting a great battle. So have compassion, turn on your love light, but convince yourself of the vision that you will end, you will end all the madness and depravity of the world forever. It's in perception. That's the war. That's the battleground Earth. Teach yourself not to react to anything. With Mr. Mink next door, you have these what would be horrible physical experiences. You're fighting and rolling all the time, but you're like a child. Like he said to a bunch of the greatest fighters the other day, he was like, no, we're all little boys inside. And for the toughest guy you'll ever meet, in other words, he can do all these MMA things. On top of that, a genius. A literal genius, and so he can handle and do everything and anything in the world. And his mentor, Elegy, she's here also. It's the same person. And I'll pay for that in a nice, sweet way. Because we all love each other. We all live for each other. We are one another. My mom, your mom, we're family. Please remember my mom in your prayer, although she's my teacher. I remember your mom in my prayer. There's one God. It's in perception, and the rest will fade away. It will take a few years. Many of us are already enlightened. We're born that way. And many of us have to go through great travail to become the powerful teacher that we are. And I don't say this lightly. When I call someone a teacher, I mean that with all my heart and all my soul. Because I know what everyone's gone through. I see it. To get to be who they are. I know the great battle they fought in this world. Or in some other star system to get here. Because this was the last stand. As soon as you know who you are spiritually, the war is over. It's called enlightenment. is called you. Isn't it you? God is now with you to the end of time. We come to timelessness and perception through using any of these self-enhancement techniques or prayer, and it will simply be there. I know when I was a little boy, St. John would walk me to school. And you're too young, you don't know that this can't be, but it's very natural to you. Sometimes he'd hold my hand and talk to me, and I want to get back to that place. I'm tired of looking at the devil in the eye all day on behalf of other people who aren't doing their part. It's a little bit of prayer. And Holy Father will be found walking alongside you. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sculta.